Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. I thought this evening I'd come down and do some seascapes. I haven't done some seascapes for quite some time, but tonight's a perfect opportunity. It's not super bright, it's nice and light overcast, and I'm around this big rocky area. The tide is coming in quite quick, so I have to work a bit quick. I'll show you the gear I've bought with me, and then we'll get on with taking some pictures. I've got out the Mamiya RZ67. It's got a 645 back on it. Most of you guys in the comments go, why are you carrying that lump around? Well, it's a decent camera, and it was probably the best medium format camera that I've got for this sort of work with detachable lenses, so that's why I bought this one out. Obviously I've got a nice sturdy tripod as well that it will sit on. And I've also bought out a yellow filter as well, just to try and add a little bit of contrast to the film that I'm going to be using. Ilford Delta 100 120 film, a beautiful film. If you've never shot this film or you're new to film photography, this is one of the films that you might have been looking at and thinking, oh, it says professional on it, you know. Some of the words online might scare you off by saying that it has to be bang on, your exposures have to be bang on. Your developing has to be bang on for this film. It's less forgiving than FP4 and HP5, etc. But once you get used to one of these sort of films, they really are very, very good. And I've come here tonight, I just want to get some photographs, black and white, of sort of seascape here with rocks. And it's ideal, because the tide's coming in, it's ideal. I haven't got to walk miles to try and get some water coming over rocks. It's only just there. Okay, the back's on nice and tight. So I've also got with me my light meter as well. I'm not sure if I'll be using incident yet or a bit of spot metering. If I do use spot metering, I generally will go for the shadow area where I want detail and then underexpose a couple of stops. Obviously that shadow area on the spot meter is going to give me middle grey. That's going to be too light for any scene, but at least it gives me a ballpark to sit in, and then I can decide if I need to go 1, 2 or maybe 3 stops under to try and bring everything back into balance. I've got ideas in my head for compositions, what I want, and as always, something like this, I'm always looking to see what I can make a print of. So I'm looking at the scene, looking at the lighting, especially the lighting, and you know, just seeing if this is going to work in the darkroom. Obviously I'm going to be very aware of dark black rocks, because they don't generally come out too great in the darkroom when it lightens like this. Okay, let's advance the film. I love film photography, it's so much fun. Right, that sounded really geeky, but it is. It's my first composition. I've spotted over there these nice rocks. I've got some dry rocks and I've got some wet rocks as well. The light is on them really nice, not too powerful. Just need to bring the tripod down, create a composition and see what I want. Whatever the water's going to give me is up to me to wait for that right moment as it's coming over the rocks. As you can see, nothing too slow. I'm not going for silky smooth seascapes. A little bit of movement would be nice in the picture. And climbing over these rocks is a nightmare. I'll break me bloody ankles. So I don't want to go too slow on the shutter speeds, but I want to shoot f11, which will give me some depth of field. So at the moment I've got that in the background. I've got these nice wet rocks and a little bit of the dry rock as well in front of me. I've just got to do some metering. You guys can see the composition through there that I've got. Whoop. That's with the yellow filter on, obviously. And I've got to allow 1 stop for that yellow filter. So whatever my meter comes back with, I've got to allow another stop of exposure for that yellow filter. So what I'm going to do is just spot meter on an area that I want some detail in the shadow part. And then I've been developing with Pyro lately, in 510 Pyro. So my best results were 3 stops under my metered exposure. I'll show you what it is in a second. So I've got a black rock there I'd like detail on. That will return middle grey value at f11. Okay, it's giving me 1/8 of a second. Okay, that's going to return middle grey. I'm going to go to 1/15th, 1/30th, 1/60th of a second, but then I've got that yellow filter on, so I'm going to come back down to 1/30th of a second. So that should give me a decent shot. The only thing is I forgot my bloody cable release. That's okay, I'm not in those longer exposure areas. Just wait for a nice bit of movement. Done. And the difference between my meter area down the bottom there and the sky, 2, 3, It's about four stops, which is great. When I get in the darkroom, I know that my paper's got about a 5 stop range on it, so that should print nicely. And if you're new to film photography, you'll probably look online for funky, fun-looking, inexpensive films. And when I get messages from new shooters, I often get asked what films are best to start out with. And I always say grab some Ilford FP4 or HP5, you can't go wrong. Ilford's Delta range, however, is a different beast altogether. They call it their professional film, but you don't need to be a professional film shooter to enjoy the stuff. Just make sure that you expose the film and develop the film correctly, as apparently it's less forgiving for exposure errors, say, than FP4, and the fixing times need to be longer. So if you get that down to an art, you're bound to get some awesome negatives for scanning or printing in the darkroom. You can find all this information on Ilford's tech sheet. The grain structure is different compared to your FP4 and HP5. I'm not going to pretend that I'm a silver halide geek and that I can smell the film's emulsion and fart out the answer. Delta is a tabular grain structure, and FP4 and HP5 are the more traditional cubic grain structures. Simply put, Delta films are sharper, finer grain and give more tonality and a tad more contrast. But if you want to learn more, go onto Ilford's website. They've got all the answers for you about their Delta range films. I just took that shot there, and I think it'd be nice to get a little bit of slow motion inside on the water. So instead of F11, I've gone down 3 stops to F32, which means I've then got to give myself 3 more stops on the exposure side. So instead of 130, if I've gone to 1/4 of a second, it should give me a nice little bit of motion on that water as it comes over. Let's try it out. Got it. I've just seen a scene behind the camera where you're looking at over that way. It's quite nice. I might try and come down low and see how this works. This is a heavy camera to run around with, I must admit. All the way, this is lovely. I'll show you guys what I'm looking at. If you can see, that's the composition that I'm going for. And the metering the same, F11, 1/30th of a second, nothing's changed. I've just got to check for that sky. I don't want that blowing out so much in the darkroom I have to start burning in. So we'll just do a bit more metering between the sky and the ground and see what we come up with. So it's not all about the rocks and the sea. I've just seen this composition, this old dry, rotted stairway here around these stones. And I'm quite close. I'll show you inside the camera on the photograph. You can see it, there you go. That's what I've got. And this sort of scene, I don't have to get all fancy with a spot metering. There's a lot of grey around here. I've just got to kind of decide what I think would be middle grey and just do a meter on that. And you know, again, this is just playing around, having a test. Hopefully I've got some good negatives, but when I get back and do the developing and get in the darkroom, I can then write my notes down and say, okay, this is what I did right, or this is what I did wrong for another time. And I don't know what middle grey is. This woodwork, I'd probably want that not middle grey. I'd say one above middle grey, so I'm going to spot on the woodwork and then just whatever that returns, just overexposed by 1 stop. Obviously I've still got to remember I've got a yellow filter on. So that woodwork, the woodwork there is just giving me on the spot meter middle grey 1/15 F11, so I said I want to come 1 under that, which brings me to 8, but then I've got that filter on, so we're going to go 1/4 of a second F11. And I also made a print of the stairwood as well, which I really liked. If you remember, that was the one that I spotted on and got my middle grey, and then just come 1 under the exposure, and that was the print that I came out with. It looked a little bit overexposed on the contact sheet, but you know, this Delta 100, although it says it's not as forgiving as FP4 and HP5, easily to work with in the darkroom with that slightly overexposed neg. As you can see there, got a nice detailed print. So this time I've got the camera down low. You can see the background. I've got Venter town over the back. You can see it. The sky, I've spot metered on the sky, and that's returning 11.5, aperture 11.5, 1/15 of a second. Well, of course, I don't want it to be middle grey. I want it to be a bit lighter. So I'm going to come down to 1/8, but it kills that yellow filter. Go back to 1/15 That should be all right. 1/15 f11.5. Whoa, wet feet. Oh, yeah. Oh, right down my ankles. Wet socks. You can see how much the lighting is changing now. The sun's setting behind those cliffs. The beautiful skies, look. Lovely skies, but I've lost all the light around this area. So what I'm going to do is walk off, back up the stairs, up to the top there, see what I can get along the top. That drop right there. I've got my camera hanging off the edge, near enough. But that's a nice scene there if I can get that. I need to get the camera over a bit more. We'll see if that works. Bloody hell, I don't fancy falling down there, I'll tell you. That's about as far as I can get. I'm right on the edge. I'll show you the composition I've got. That's a nice photograph though. Well, there's the composition there. Really nice. And these are all portrait. There's no landscapes at all. I've got portraits on these. Portrait mode, not people. A couple of guys over the back there just smoking weed. I mean, do you want some, mate? No, you're all right. Imagine that, I'd fall off this cliff. Done. So the only way I can see for myself in the darkroom how my exposures were is by making a contact sheet. That's the test sheet I did there for the contact sheet, and there it is itself. And I can see only a couple of my exposures were slightly out. This one was a little bit slightly, maybe one stop darker than it should have been. This one are okay. These are all okay. This one's a little bit brighter. The where I metered for grey, middle grey. These two here, the first shot, well, the last shot you saw me taking when I nearly fell off the cliff. That one there has come out totally jet black. And I'll tell you what happened there. That didn't sound like half a second. As soon as I hit the shutter button, I knew that the camera had fired much faster than I'd set it to be. And I couldn't figure out first. I thought, oh, maybe I've got a problem with the camera. But when I got back, I realised that the batteries were kind of like dying out on that camera. So I had to change the batteries, and I think that is what that problem was there. And the very last shot was just an exposure test that I did, just so I can see the density of the negative itself. And these two here are identical scenes. This one I did with my spot metering, and just out of curiosity, I did one with incident reading. And the incident reading gave me a couple of stops exposure than my spot metering, which did worry me at first. But I continued with my gut with all my spot readings to be correct, and you can see the difference there. That's overexposed with the incident reading, and that one is nicely exposed with the spot metering. And the only thing about Delta 100 and 510 Pyro is the grain. It is so fine, and it's barely noticeable under the magnifier here. I could just about find it. So I think you guys can just about see the negative if I brighten it up. There you go, there it is there. I'm just coming down a couple of stops on the enlarger to f8, and I'll place my test strip across there, which is between the sky, a little bit of sea and a little bit of rock, and see where we go from there. So this is my test strip in half stop increments, so 10 seconds here is my base time, and half a stop less looks about nice. I'm going to do a quick test at half a stop less, one strip of paper across the whole lot, and just see how that comes out. I might just dodge some of the water and just to make that pop a little tiny bit more, but let's do one more test and we'll have a look. And this is my f-stop timer that I did a video on recently. It looks like a flux capacitor from Back to the Future. So 10 seconds on my base time. All I said, I need to just drop half a stop, which is 7 seconds. One full stop is 5 seconds. So just half a stop, 7 seconds. I need to do a test on that, see how that looks. So that's my test strip there, complete test strip, 7 seconds across the whole lot. I've got detail in the sky. I reckon I can just do a little tiny bit of dodging on the water just to make that pop, and I might just throw contrast 5 under the enlarger and just hit selected areas of these rocks just to get some, just to make those pop as well. Not that the image is grey, it's black and white, but that's what I reckon. So let's go for a full print. So I don't need to do any dodging and burning really on the print. I think it'll come out fine as it is with that grade 1 filter, but it's all personal preference at the end of the day. So right, 7 seconds, just need to dodge that sea area for a couple of seconds and then get the contrast 5 filter underneath and just play around with some of those stones. So a couple of seconds, 1, 2, that's the water done. Get a contrast 5 in there, and what contrast 5 filter does in a darkroom, it's basically a hard hitting contrast filter, so it will hardly touch the highlights, but it will work on the blacks, and the longer you leave it under there, the blacker the rocks will get, so I've got to be careful. I'm just going to use this little burn tool here with a hole and just go around the rocks, see if it will work. And I'll just turn the timer on freehand. Okay, the timer's on. So I'll just turn the lamp on the enlarger. I'm not going to put the timer on, and just burn some of those rocks. Just a few different areas. So that's just going to hit some of those blacker parts. See what that does. And it goes into the developer, and I'm using FOTOSPEED's FD20, I think it's called, the print developer for paper. It's quite economical. Also notice the black border. I've decided to put a black border on this one, and I'm using a shaved rebate negative carrier that I got from Bit by Bit out in Texas. I'll put a link to Tim's stuff in the description if you're interested. Okay, so I'll let that go for another minute or so, get it stopped, fixed, and I'll show you guys the results. So I had some good clean results in the darkroom from those negatives. This is the first one that I printed. A little tiny bit of burning up in the sky there, a little bit of contrast 5 dotted around the pebbles at the bottom there, or the stones, and a little bit of dodging on the sea, and that one's come out really nice. And I had to use a 1 graded filter just to pull the contrast down a little tiny bit, and it seems to have worked really nice. These prints are going on my Etsy page, guys, if you're interested in these prints. I've done 2 in the darkroom that I'm going to be putting up, this one and also another scene that I liked. Same area, sort of similar composition, but I'm tighter in on this one that I shot, and that one's come out really nice as well. Again, a little bit of dodging on this part of the water here just to make that water white and pop a bit more, and a little bit of burning in on the water at the back there, and that print's come out really nice as well. So that was a really nice shoot down the beach. These are the negs that I've got here, nice and packed away. I've just got to write my notes down on there and put those in with me collection. I'm glad I come in the darkroom and made some prints out of those negs, because I think they've come out really nice. And that sort of photography I enjoy, going down the beach, nice and quiet, just relax, listen to the waves, you know, listen to a bit of nature and take your photographs, come back. And I developed those in 510 Pyro, and like I said, that grain was so fine, it was tricky to see it under the magnifier, under the enlarger, but they're very sharp, and also nice tonality as well in those prints. All the details have come out, which is really nice. And that film's like £8 a roll, so it really is a good, superior film to shoot. So I've written all my notes down in my little notebook from this shoot, and also the developing and also the metering that I did. So next time I go and shoot this film, I know exactly what to do and get decent results from it. And I bought quite a few rolls of that Ilford Delta, so I'll be shooting that quite a bit in the future on the channel. I've also got quite a bit of FP4 recently, what I bought. Went to a car show yesterday and banged out some of that, so I'll be coming out with a video on that probably next week. But any of you guys that have never tried any of Ilford's Delta range, or if you're new to film photography and you've wondered about it, just go grab a roll, have a play with it and see how it works for you. Works really well for me, and it is a really good film to shoot. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed the video. I'm sweating my off in this dark room because it's hot out there and I've got to get out of here before I collapse. I'll catch you next time.